Welcome to Neighborhood Snapshot. My name is Bob Sardelli. Today we welcome to the LATV studios Mr. Louis DiGiovanni, Mr. Settimio Fermani, and Mr. Polino Messangeli, who, depending on the age of you in the LATV viewing audience, will bring back memories, or if you are younger or new to Leominster, will give you a bit of Leominster's history. This is going to be a fun interview, a wide-ranging interview. In our pre-program discussions downstairs, we had a good time, and so this should be a potpourri of many interesting things. I'm going to introduce the audience. On my left is Polino Messangeli, Pell.
All right.
And some other names too, Mashie, Lou DiGiovanni, Digi, Junior, Junior, yeah, and Set Fermani, and I've known Set always as Set, Settimio Fermani. Today, we live in a world of supermarkets setting the scene. We have supermarkets. We can get our food from mini-marts. Gas stations have markets now. There are convenience stores, even department stores. Some of the bigger department stores are getting into now selling groceries. But we are going to be talking about an era in Leominster and throughout the country in about 75 years ago, a time before supermarkets. And we're specifically going to concentrate on the Gloria chain food store business, and which later became Luigi's Market. It was a family business, Lou's family. And we're going to mention some of the other many local markets that were where people got their food. We're talking about an era in history approximately in the 30s. It was the Depression time, pre-World War II. It was in probably the midst of the Great Depression. And in those days, people had to eat, of course, and they grew their own. Many people grew their own food. They had family gardens. We'll talk about that. Grew all sorts of things. There were some large grocery stores in the center of town in Leominster, but there were many local stores. In fact, if you go around Leominster and you grew up in that area, you can still see some of in the neighborhoods, you can still, if you know what you're looking for, you can still recognize some of the fronts of buildings which were at one time a local grocery store. I have from the Leominster Directory of 1936, and the Leominster Directories are a priceless resource for historical researchers in Leominster because they list many things. So if you have to look back in time, you can see who was living where and what the businesses were. The one from 1936 has, I counted them up, 60 neighborhood grocery stores. And when I say neighborhood, some of the stores were within the center of town. For example, Brockelman's. Some of you will remember Brockelman's, the A&P, some of the others. The Gloria chain food store incorporated was at 34 Monument Square. Now, Lou, what is at 34 Monument Square now, or in that vicinity?
I didn't know it was 34 Monument Square. Thank you. The Gloria chain was originally put together by Judge Pappas in Boston. And they primarily Italian goods, imported or what have you. And in 1949, they started selling the stores off. And my dad bought this one at 34 Monument Square. And that's when the family got into it. My dad and my brother and I, and Pell, Massey, and a few other people, like, name somebody, pal.
Oh, we
Fufu?
Fufu, Inky, Choo Choo.
Inky Lance.
Anybody know their real name?
I don't know. I don't think I ever learned them.
Now, what is that? Is 34 Monument Square would be where Friendly's?
Right.
Friendly is just
Used to
that.
be.
Used to be.
Yeah.
Friendly's is recently that particular store in that location is just
Yeah.
closed, but that was where the Gloria chain was, and then subsequently Luigi's.
Right.
Now, when did the Gloria chain store change to Luigi's, approximately?
Shortly after, as soon as we had enough money to buy a sign. And it dissolved. Judge Pappas died or went out of business. He just sold the chain out. And then certain individuals in these towns bought the stores. The one in Fitchburg on Water Street got picked up.
There was a Gloria chain in Waterstone,
Yes.
in Fitchburg.
And
too.
there were Gloria's chains all over, really. North Shore,
Yeah.
Revere, and they just went out of business but got picked up by
By
somebody.
other. And as I look at some of these names in the directory, I see in the, I'm looking at the 1938 street directory, and I see Fermani Joseph, 87 Mechanic Street, set.
That's correct.
Now, that was your dad?
That was my dad. My dad was the manager of the Italian colonial stores. There were two of them, one up on Lincoln Terrace and one on Lancaster Street, down where Fat Boys is today.
Yeah.
And it came down the line. He decided he'd do something on his own, and Florio's Market, which was down on Mechanic Street, was available, and he purchased that building, and we were there for the years to come, if you will.
Ah.
Yeah, and I worked there with, of course, at that time I was about 9 years old, and my brother being older worked there, my sister filled in. It was family type deal. We lived right upstairs, so we were convenient 24 hours a day, if you will. Sometimes I almost felt like it. So that's where we were since 1937.
And your brother Lydio.
Yeah, and Lydio, definitely. Yeah, Lydio worked there with, and Lydio became a welder and went to school down in Worcester. And behind us was Barker and Davis, if you call that machine shop. And in between working with us at the store, he filled in whenever they needed a welder behind us.
Ah. And I notice on the Victory Market, this is 1936. Now, many of you in Leominster remember the Victory. Many of the audience remembers the Victory food chain, which now Hannaford, the Hannaford store. But Victory Market, which really grew, 19 Mechanic Street. So, so there were many.
We were on the other side of the tracks. Further down, 87 Mechanic.
But almost every neighborhood in those days, almost every neighborhood had its own grocery store, little grocery store, because people really didn't venture too often out of their neighborhood in those days. We talked downstairs about how you pretty much stayed in your own neighborhood, and you, as kids, you stayed in your own neighborhood pretty much. Went to town once in a while. It was probably a big deal. But once you got to junior high school, you started going, once you left elementary school and got to junior high school, you rubbed elbows with other kids, and that was a good thing. And then you got to know that other kids were kids and had a lot of things in common, which was a good thing. So that was kind of the equalizer.
We got to learn and meet with a lot of what became very close friends, from that, if you will.
Yes. So that just confinement sort of your neighborhood, that kind of broke down, which was a good thing. But it was, we shared some interesting stories about how it was interesting, well, I'll say interesting to leave your neighborhood. It was sometimes.
It was.
If you dared leave your neighborhood.
If you dared leave your neighborhood. And thankfully that has, that broke down once you rubbed elbows, as I said, with the other kids in town. The Gloria chain those days. Now, Pell, you have some interesting. How did you get your job, and why did you get your job? I remember Pell, in the audience, when Pell came to the United States, his family emigrated from Italy, and Pell was a very, very good athlete, I remember, in those days. And some biographical things. I'm skipping around a little bit here, but Pell went on to be a distinguished career in education. You're retired now, right?
Yes.
Retired, but you are called on sometimes to do consulting.
A few times.
A few times. And Digi was in the family business, a businessman in the grocery business. And Set was associated for years and years and years with the Leominster Credit Union for years and years and years, and is a volunteer, does so much good work with so many organizations, and the church, and in the Shoalin Farms, and on and on and on and on and on. So, and it's well appreciated, all of the work you, and Digi is now.
Digi dig it down.
He's going to run another raffle. But in reminiscing, Pell, one of your first jobs was at the Gloria chain store, and how did you get that job?
Well, it was very interesting. The Gloria chain, and then later, Luigi's, and I came in. My family moved into Leominster in 1950. So after the 1936, wartime era. They were a very friendly, customer-oriented, grocery store. Families could go in, buy what they needed. If you didn't have the money to pay, they would just simply write your name down and how much you owed. And then on payday, you went in and put in so much money toward that. And they became very friendly, particularly with people like my parents who were new to the community, so they were very welcoming. And I remember that, Lou's brother, Digi, always spoke very fondly of my parents. And said to them, at some point when, your son Paulino gets to be 15, 16 years of age at the time, where you could work, send him down here, I'll give him a job. So one day my mother came home and said to me, Paulino, Mr. DiGiovanni wants to see you. We were living on Pleasant Street at the time, right across from what used to be the synagogue, the Jewish synagogue. So I went down and walked to the back of the store where Digi was, behind the meat counter. And when I looked up and he saw me, right away he said, Mashy. It kind of took me a little bit by surprise. He didn't say Paulino, he said Mashy. And from that day forward, that was my nickname, Mashy. And all the workers, customers, people that I delivered, to their homes, to this day will recognize me as Mashy. But that's how I got my job. I was in the spring of the 9th grade. I was at Gallagher at the time. That would have been 1955, April or May or thereabouts. I was not yet 16. So he was trying to be helpful to my family by giving me an opportunity to work and earn a little bit of money. And it turned out to be just a wonderful, wonderful experience in 6 or 7 years that I worked there. But that's how I got the job. It was always a part-time job after school, high school, and including college. I worked there for three years, almost 4 years, all during my college years as well.
And you could speak Italian, so you helped with the people who would come in and.
Yes, interesting. In Italy, as you know, there are a lot of dialects, okay? My dialect was Abruzzese, but in the region of Abruzzi, you have so many towns and cities, and each one of them has their particular dialect. I always have this remembrance of with my parents on a Saturday, going to sell some produce at an open market in the very next town, Popoli it was called, and it was no more than maybe 3 or 4 kilometers.
In Italy.
In Italy, that you walk to. And the produce being laid out on a blanket on the ground, and people coming up and asking me, how much are the tomatoes or how much are the cucumbers? I could not understand them. Could not understand them. From 3 or 4 kilometers away, their dialect was so different that I'd always have to refer them to my parents. So working at Luigi's Market, the Italian people, obviously came from different parts of Italy, and when they spoke, most of the time in Italian, it would be their particular dialect. So sometimes there would be a little difficulty in understanding that, but we got along fine. We got along just fine.
And Luigi's was the name that Gloria chain then changed to Luigi's. And Lou, could you show us, please, a picture of the Gloria chain?
How's that? Keep it steady.
Okay, keep it steady.
Trouble is they can see your face.
This building that you're looking at was prior to the Gloria chain, really. It's a picture of my dad who was inside. I don't know if you can see him. And to the left, with the 2 girls, is my godfather, John Feeney. And way to the right in the entryway is the Greek banana man from Fitchburg, whose name was Candianis?
I believe so.
Yeah. This was right after the First World War. It's unfortunate that shortly after the country went into a depression, and they gave credit to everybody and ended up losing the store and losing the money, like it probably happened to everybody at the time.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience, and I'm pretty proud of these 2 guys, my father and my godfather.
As you should be, as you should be, yeah.
Mr. Feeney went on to the shoe business, repair shoe business across the street. But the thing that my dad and him had was priceless. They were just the best of friends.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
And the Feeney name in the shoe business,
Right.
in Leominster,
Right.
So that's for those who of that era, and who have a Leominster background.
Yeah, they
recognize that.
remember.
Oh yeah.
They'll remember.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the other photos you have there, you mentioned, Pell, you mentioned the Abruzzi area of Italy, and I think that, Lou, you have a picture of, there were many benevolent societies, various organizations, and this is a picture that Pell is holding up of the Corfinio Club. And all of the members are all decked out in costume, some with Indians and Native Americans and so on. And this was in October 1934. And they were celebrating Columbus Day, which was a very, very big holiday. It's kind of diminished somewhat today because of political correctness and all kinds of things going on today. But it was a very, very big holiday then. And some of these gentlemen, most of whom have passed, but I don't know whether any of them are still with us. But
I don't think so.
I don't think so. But the Corfinio Abruzzi was one of the clubs. And the Corfinio was located where?
On Lancaster Street.
Lancaster Street.
325 Lancaster.
Right across from the St. Leo Cemetery.
Almost
Opposite.
That's correct.
What were some of the other benevolent societies? I have here, and before you answer that, 1937, the Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks, Christian Science Hall, the Colombo Hall on 6th Street, the Eagles, Fraternal Order of the Eagles, Grand Army Hall. That must have been from the Civil War era, the Grand Army of the Republic. Improved Order of Redmen's Hall, the Independent Order of the Odd Fellows Hall, which that building is now the credit union.
Well, part of the
Credit union. Kendall Hall, which is still in North, it's the fire station now. The Loyal Order of the Moose, the Masonic Hall, the Saladini Society, Salvation Army Hall, Sons of Italy Hall, 298 Lancaster Veteran of Foreign Wars Hall, and I'm sure there were many, many others. What are some of the, particularly since we're all Americans here, thank God, and we're all, I subscribe or ascribe to the melting pot. We should be a melting pot in this country. That's one of the things that's made us great. I don't subscribe to the mosaic. We're a mosaic that's been used, or this tossed salad. We should be a melting pot because America is a great country, and we appreciate our heritage and where we came from originally, our ancestors. But we should be a melting pot. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. We should be instead of we should be out of many one rather than out of one many, which is sort of happening in this era, which is an unfortunate thing. But I'm very hopeful. But since the names, we're all Americans, right. But Fermani, De Giovanni, Masangeli, Sardelli, we're all Americans. But what were some of the other Italian clubs that you have?
The melting pot you mentioned didn't come easy with the Italians. They came over and they grouped together from their original location.
Which is so typical. I mean, that's normal. Even today, that's happening. We have new groups coming over, and I guess it's just a normal part of becoming an American. You come and you kind of, the people you associate with and you understand. But then eventually the kids coming up, the younger kids, they will be Americanized.
Yeah, right.
We hope, truly right. American.
Right.
Which is a wonderful thing. Go ahead. I didn't mean to.
I can remember when these clubs were organized, when they were running, that it came from that immediate neighborhood. The two daughters were from Colombo Hall on 6th Street, and the Brutzeys mainly lived on Lancaster Street and streets off of it, and the Saladini Hall, the Macajans lived there. And it was very territorial, much like Macajan, much like back in Italy. They did not
assimilate,
not necessarily get along together, and it took a while.
Yeah, it takes time, and that's happening today.
We had 13 Italian clubs in the city.
Right.
13.
And of course, eventually they were dying off and whatever. We made an attempt to try to bring all the Italian groups together by starting the Italian Center, which Lou and I were involved in. I think I remember Pell was involved at that time or not. And we got that going pretty good, but then after a while we did a lot of big parties down there. We had quite a sizable hall. But then when the hotels came in or whatever, and of course they were beautifying it a lot more than what we could afford to do at the time, that kind of ended up petering off, so eventually we had to close it up.
I think historically, if you look at the history of Italy, which really did not become unified until about 1860, 1870. So the history of Italy, it was ruled by a number of other peoples, the French, the Germans, Austrians, Spanish, and so on. And there were a lot of principalities, prior to the unification. So people were more parochial in their thinking, more regionalized, very family, tight-knit. And that carried here, obviously, as they emigrated. But, you mentioned about the melting pot. I think what's wonderful about this country is that the immigrants that came, whether they were Italian, Irish, German, whatever, they had their own, drive, their own wanting to get ahead, provide for their families. They had their talents. They brought skills with them, many of them common laborers. What this country offered to them was an opportunity to better themselves.
Yes.
Okay. So I like to think of it somewhat as a melting pot, but retaining their individual flavors.
Yes.
Okay, which kind of blend together. But most importantly to me is, like in my family and myself personally, growing up in Italy, my occupation then was, besides going to school, was taking care of the small flock of sheep that the family had. So I'd go out in the fields every afternoon after school and tend sheep. Never in my life at that time would I have visualized that one day not only would I be in America, but I would be a teacher. I would be a school administrator and have the position that I've had in my career. And I think back, through that time and just astounded that this country offered that kind of opportunity. If I had stayed in Italy, the likelihood would have been I would have ended schooling, formal schooling, after the 5th grade, and started farming, with my father and relatives, and that pretty much would have been it. So totally different life,
Yeah.
totally different. And that happened tens of millions of times
Yes.
to all different peoples from different countries.
So America is truly a wonderful country. It really is
Absolutely.
a land of opportunity, and we welcome. It's a
Drawing
welcoming
on the
country.
individual talents and strengths
Yeah.
the skills that people brought with them.
Yeah, and the idea that each group, each nation brings in its own, for example, food.
Yep.
There are, you like
Yeah.
all kinds of
Yeah.
different foods and it is a truly wonderful country. But we're at a critical time in this country, and
At the risk of embarrassing Pell, I told him a story that happened 20 years ago. My wife and I and a group decided to go to Italy. And we took an extended tour out of Rome and went to Corfino. This is his hometown, my grandmother and grandfather's hometown. He just had to see it once. And I came back and I told Pell it was the best trip I ever made, probably ever will. It was gorgeous, beautiful. The whole country was just something else. I was really impressed. And offhandedly, I asked Pell, I says, why did you people leave this beautiful place? And he just gave me a gesture that said it all. He just went, to eat.
Yeah.
Never said to eat, just did this. And I never asked him about it again. That was a great story. Thank you for it.
yeah.
Bruce says.
But that was it, especially after the war. I mean, there are different times in the late 1880s, 1890s, and the early 1900s, and then, of course, after the war, Second World War, there was a lot of emigration, out of the European countries, particularly Italy, the southern portions, the poorer, so-called poorer regions, and basically that was the reason. You look for opportunity to take care of your family,
and that's what very eloquently said, Pal. And that's what the United States of America still hopefully offers the opportunity
It still does.
for people.
Still does.
And
We did pretty good with that, I thought.
yeah, and,
Really?
and we're when you look at history, we're really a young country, but we're a unique country. We really are, and there's always hope for the future. And that idea of out of many, one, a pluribus unum, out of many, one, not the opposite, out of one, many. We don't want to balkanize the place and split it up. And
Right.
and one of the things that, again, one of the things that's a glue, it's been described as a glue that keeps that country together, happens to be English. Everybody should. It would be wonderful. I wish I were a bilingual triangle. I'm not. I speak mainly English. But it's wonderful to know at least one other language. And many other languages, but it happens to be English. English, everybody who comes here should be able to learn. I know my grandparents, my grandfather I didn't know my father's grandparents, they had passed away, my father's parents, but my grandmother learned to speak English, and my grandfather, Nanung, Nana, my grandmother, Nanung, not too much English. He was kind of a quiet guy, but you knew what he meant when he when he had something to say. But it's good that we learn English. You can learn. I wish I knew how to speak Spanish. I would love to be able to speak Spanish. I'm kind of the age where it's kind of hard for me to learn some of these things, but I guess I could if I really put my mind to it. But that's the glue that that's one of the things that keeps our country together, is a common language. Because you see some other countries where that tends to be a divisive thing at times, when there are so many languages. But very eloquently said, and I'm getting a little off track here. But that's all right, because actually during this interview, we're going back in history, but I heard during the interview a sound that would not have been heard 75 years ago. It was like a musical sound, and it came from a device that Seth took out of his pocket, and it was a cell phone, we're in constant now today.
Yeah.
We're in constant contact. Things are so the technology. Things have changed so much. We were talking.
Some of us shut them off.
So, and this technology is wonderful, but also it's moving so fast. And one of the big changes I see today, we talked about young people. I see so many of them not communicating with each other directly. They've got their face down and they're looking.
They're texting.
They're texting, or even when they're when they're driving, they have faces down and they're texting. So
what bothers me with all that checking is that they're never going to learn how to spell. It's terrible. I see my grandchildren doing that, and I can't believe they know what they're talking about.
How about counting? How about counting?
Well, that's changed. The technology has changed. But getting back to the Luigi's and Gloria Chain Store, there's an incident where there was this young fellow employee who was very helpful, knew a lot, but he would go out on deliveries, and one day he left some Italian chestnuts on the.
We had a chicken rotisserie that Mr. DiGiovanni had bought, and would roast chickens and sold them. And where the glass plates came down on the back and the sides, there was a lip maybe an inch and a half wide of metal. And I would be in a habit. It was the kind of atmosphere in the store where if I was thirsty, I'd go over and get a bottle of soda and drank it. Okay, nobody asked questions. If I wanted an apple, I could do that. This particular time, I said, I think I'll roast some chestnuts. So I took some chestnuts and I put them all along the edge, and then I had to go out delivering groceries. I said, oh, this will be great. When I get back, I'll have roasted chestnuts waiting for me. Well, I came back, I walked in the front door, Mashy. Yeah, boss. What did you do? I said, what do you mean what I just went delivering, just coming back in. What's the matter? Did you put chestnuts in that chicken rotisserie? Yeah, yes I did. Wow, you stupid. I said, you forgot to cut them. Okay, so they all exploded at some point. You know, the gas builds up inside. You know that when you roast them, you have to slice them. Let the gas out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I just forgot to do that. So at some point, it must have sounded like a machine gun going off in the store. And they were all upset with me because I had to clean up the mess.
Now, what are some of the other pictures you have of the fraternal organizations?
Okay, this is a picture of Fodger Society.
Now, where was the Fodger Hall?
Lancaster Street.
Lancaster Street.
Right next to the fire station.
Near the old fire
Sure,
station.
You're right.
Right.
And most of these people, the Foggia is a town. And Puglia?
Puglia would be down in the heel of Italy.
All right.
Okay.
And incidentally, this is the same town that, who's the saint, the newly made saint,
Padre Pio?
with the stigma in
Yes.
the hands and the feet. This is
Padre
his
Pio.
hometown.
Ah.
They're really proud of him.
Yes, as it
This
should
was taken quite a few years ago, and a few of these people are still with us, especially the front row with the young boys and
Yeah.
girls. I wish I had some names there, but I don't. I had a sheet with names on it, but somehow it got lost. You done with this one?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Where are we going now?
Well, show that. That one is, that's an interesting one. Which
Yeah, that's great. This is my favorite. Don't know a soul in it. It's my favorite picture. Seth should remember. This is this is up on Lincoln Terrace.
That's
Yeah.
further back than I can
It
recall.
was around the times that they used to have the Feast of St. Rocco, which they stopped years ago. The club's gone now. But they're really sharp. I mean, the suits, the
Yeah.
whole setup is pretty good. And they're Marquesans.
Marquesan, naturally.
Natural.
Saladini Hall.
Saladini Hall.
Saladini
Right.
Hall.
I wish I had their names, but I don't have one.
Yeah, yeah.
I got some more here if you'd like
Yes,
to.
please.
I showed that one.
Yes, you did.
This is 1,000 years old. Nobody here is still. In fact, the building's gone. This is. Wait a minute. What's that say? With your glasses on.
Society Cofino Abruzzi.
Okay, in 1936. 1936. I was a year old. I remember.
Well, that was before I was born, son.
This is the original group that came over from Abruzzi and the surrounding towns, Cofino and surrounding towns. And if I had the names, they'd be recognized by most people because most of their kids stayed in and around Leominster, and it was a good time in those days. Everybody had a reason to get together.
And the Cofino Abruzzi, that's where on Lancaster Street,
Right.
almost opposite the beginning of as you're going down Lancaster Street,
Right.
the St. Leo's Cemetery.
Right. Incidentally, this picture was not at the Cofino. It was before the Cofino building got put together. It was at
You said the Wigwam?
the Wigwam, right?
Where was the Wigwam?
It was upstairs, one of the stores on Monument Square.
Monument.
The building's gone now,
Yeah.
too.
Monty's Garden.
Monty's Garden.
That was
Same building. Yeah,
same building? That was the Wigwam was? Yeah.
If you say so, because you're older. You always will be. Anyway, that's that
That's an
one.
interesting one.
And this one is a riot. This is
Did we see that one?
did we?
That's the one with the Columbus Day.
Did we see that?
Yeah,
one?
we
Did
saw
we
it.
see
We
that?
saw
Yes.
that.
Yeah, that's how old he's getting. He forgets awful soon.
What's
Quickly.
your name again?
I don't know.
Okay.
Did you see my hat that's on that hat?
Okay. Dedicated banquet, St. Anne's School Auditorium, Leominster, Mass., September 8th, 1957. A lot of these people I recognize because it isn't that far
definitely,
back. And it was a big deal. St. Anne's finally had their school
Yeah.
together. And I know a lot of these people, my aunts and uncles. And
I've seen pictures similar to that for that one, and yes, I recognize a lot of the
Yeah.
a lot of the people
yeah,
in that.
I think, who was the priest that was?
Then it was Father Genovese.
Yeah,
Father
Genovese,
Genovese,
yes.
right, who was a terrific guy, but nobody knew it.
Yeah, he was
He's
very,
just
very,
very
he
to
really-
himself.
Yeah, and Father D, one of my favorite all-time priests, Father Di Benedetto.
Oh, yes.
Dominic Di
Dominic Father D,
Benedetto,
yeah.
Seth and I remember Father Gannon.
Oh, yes.
That,
A little story on Father Di Benedetto. He got to know him pretty well, but he went to visit a relative of mine who was not Catholic that was in the hospital. And she was just kind of waking up, and she looked up at him and says, My gosh, if I was younger, she's had to become Catholic.
Father Gannon.
Interestingly, one of the stories I heard about Father Dom Di Benedetto is that as a young man, he worked at Brockleman
Yep.
store, one of the stores, you know,
Yep.
before he obviously went into the seminary.
Yep.
Very, very nice.
And I think Father D was a boxer. I think he was
I didn't know
in his
that.
younger days.
From Fitchburg.
From Fitchburg, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, from St.
wasn't
Anthony's
aware of
Territory.
that.
Yeah, he was a great, wonderful priest.
Oh, he certainly was.
Yeah.
Certainly was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things about these stores, as we mentioned earlier, they're very family oriented. I always felt that I was part of the family. I always looked at Louis as an older brother, his brother Digi as a father image, and his grandfather as a grandfather image. His father, rather, as a grandfather image, you know, for me. And some of the best lessons that I learned in growing up about life and the values were learned in that store. And one in particular that I have used many times in my professional career in getting a message across to teachers and administrators and people who work in schools about what it's all about is that when I first started working there, as I said, I was in the 9th grade or just finishing up. And so I started by stocking shelves, okay? And Digi would get some grocery cases in, and he'd just put a price on it. And then I would stamp it, you know, with the old stamp, that metal stamp, okay? And put them up on the shelf. Well, this one particular day, I'm doing that. I had about 12 or 14 cases to put up. And it was only Digi and I that were in the store working at the time. So I had to cover the front. Anybody wanted vegetables, check out, and so on. And so he would say, Mashy, customer up front. And I'd leave my job. I'd go take care of the customer. I'd come back. A few seconds later, Mashy, customer up front. I'd leave again. After the 3rd or 4th time, I went to him and I said, you know, Digi, if these people don't start bothering me, I'm never going to get my job done. He looked at me and he said, Mashy, these people don't bother you, you don't have a job.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
And it was something that just,
Stuck with you.
you know, I absorbed.
Yeah, yeah.
And I always related that story in my professional career to remind people of what it's all about, that these kids are not here for us, we're here for them.
Yeah, yeah.
But did you know, did you tell me one time that you sold a lot of brooms there?
Oh, we don't want to go there. Tell those, after the taping.
But you know one thing I like like we weren't directly in the center of town, but down off the street, living down called French Hill, and a lot of poor people and big families down there. And you kind of watched out for your area. And I can remember one time, there's a couple of kids came in and stole some candy or something. And I said to my father, you know, so-and-so stole candy. He said, sorry, they need it more than we do. And that you did. You ever tried to help those type people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My dad worked the front of the store, produce.
Right.
And we had an old man in town from the old country, and he would come in around the same time on a Thursday. And he'd come in and give a hug to my father, talked Italian, and put 2 pounds of apples in the suspended scale.
I can picture those.
Yeah.
The old, yeah.
And while my dad's putting the apples in a bag, the old man would grab a couple apples and put them in his pocket. And I caught him. And after he left, I told my dad, I says, you know, when you're putting the apples in the bag, he's grabbing 2 and putting them in his pocket. And my dad said, well, don't say anything. The next time he comes in, keep your mouth closed and your eyes open. Maybe you'll learn something. So I couldn't wait for the old man to come in the following Thursday. And he came in, and he put the 2 pounds of apples in the scale. My father grabs the apples, put them in a bag. The old man grabbed 2 apples, put them in the pocket, and leave. So I said, Dad, I mean, come on, what's going on here? I didn't learn anything. He says, see, you didn't keep your eyes open. Look in the scale. And I looked in the scale, and there's 2 apples left in the scale. They've been doing this for years. It's a game. And I didn't know it, you know? Try to keep your eyes open.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we've seen so many changes, some positive, some negatives in society, you know, through the years. The technology, as I said, has advanced. When acquiring the acquisition of food, clothing, supplies is so different from today. The stores are different today. We talked about that. What did your neighborhoods look like back then, in those days? I mean,
when we first came to Leominster, as I said, in 1950, we lived for a year on Eden Glen. My family rented a couple of rooms from the landlady, who still lived there with her son. And it was a close neighborhood. I was friendly with the boy next door and boy across the street. But pretty much, you know, we stayed in that area. You know, you could play outside. You know, it was safe. You didn't worry about it. You go out in the morning and, you know, come back when you got hungry. Okay,
Yeah.
and your parents didn't worry about you. In learning English and adapting at the time, one of the stories I remember is that I went to a friend's house to ask, you know, if he could come out and play. Now, I would have been maybe 10, 11 years old at the time. And whoever came to the door and said, you know, so-and-so's not here, he's at the wreck. So I left there at the wreck. I said, gee, I didn't hear anything about a plane crash or a train wreck or anything. And later on, I realized they were talking about the recreation center.
Right. You thought it was WRECK.
Yeah, but it was, you know, things like that in adapting. We talked about the neighborhood, you know, which was at that point Lincoln School was the neighborhood school. Okay, just like the grocery stores, you know, were spread all over the town. We had the smaller schools, and my first grade in Leominster was in grade 5, and obviously we would walk to school. And when I started there, my teacher, Christine McGrell,
Miss McGraw.
wonderful, wonderful lady. Very accommodating to new students coming in, welcoming them, making them feel comfortable. And I got there the first morning, and I was late. She called me over and said, Paulino, you know, you're late for school. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. McGraw. I'll be here on time tomorrow. Next day, I show up, you know, about 20 past 8. She said, you know, Paulino, you're late for school. I said, oh, Mrs. McGraw, I'm sorry. She said, you know, it's 8:15. The third day, I'm late again. And she said, Paulino, school starts at 8:15. You got to get here. And the minute she said 8:15, I realized what I had done. Quarter to me was 25, because the first, as I learned the language, I learned about money, and quarter was 25 cents. So when she said, school starts at 8:15, I thought she was talking 8:25. I don't know, why is she yelling at me? I'm not late. And then the minute she said 8:15, then I realized, my mistake. But, you know, we all walked to school. Some of the classmates might have lived on Lincoln Terrace, which is just up the hill, so might walk home with them and then back down to Eden Glen and so on. It was just that comfortable of a neighborhood, you know, for me at that age. Not a very big neighborhood,
no.
Okay, but certainly plenty of friends and plenty of things to do, because you found ways to keep yourself, you know, occupied.
That was my experience too.
Yeah.
I pretty much stuck to the neighborhood, and then as you got a little older, then you went out, and then you met other friends and so on. And then again in junior high, then you really.
That's when your world kind of expanded,
yes.
Okay? And you found out there was a Priest Street School and a George Street School.
And a Spruce Street School. You know, you mentioned a smaller school. I went to Lincoln for 3 years. Then when we moved down to Mechanic Street, of course, I had to transfer down to Spruce. We had 4 rooms.
That's right. It was a
six
four-room
classes
school.
and 4 rooms.
The,
But you know, I think I learned there more than I did in any place I was at all the way up. I
Was
really
it a
mean that.
log cabin?
Yeah. Behind us was listen, behind us was the dairy. I used to have to go up and take care of the cows. but that's where it was, and really that was quite interesting with the 6 classes and 4 rooms.
Yeah, and the experience of there were activities in your own. The kids
yes,
were
definitely.
today is another change that's not really a positive one, but many children are glued to video games and things inside. They're not getting out. They're not getting the exercise they should get. In those days, you went out and you played. You played, and
You had to use your imagination.
You used your
So it
imagination.
wasn't just physical exercise; it was mental exercise because you had to make things up. You didn't have a lot of, say, manufactured things. So if you wanted to play cowboys and Indians, you went into the woods and you cut some branches and you made a bow or made something that looked like a rifle or
I don't
whatever.
want to be an Indian again.
Excuse me?
I'm tired of being an Indian.
Oh, okay. You could be a cowboy, right?
Well, you mentioned making up things. Of course, we couldn't afford footballs and baseballs, that sort of thing. So
Absolutely.
you took a bag, or a rag bag or whatever, you tie it with some.
Exactly. I'll tell you a story about rag ball. Okay, growing up in Italy, we didn't have a real ball, and of course, all we played was soccer. So we would take a sock and put rags in it and fold it over and finally sew it up. And you get something maybe the size of a softball, and you take your shoes off, play it out on the street, and I don't know how many split toes. Okay, but one time after the war, we used to get care packages from the relatives. And that was always a big event in the house. It came to my grandmother, who was the matron of the family, and she would call the families together, 2 or 3 families, her children and grandchildren. They'd open up the package, and if a pair of shoes was in there, whoever it fit, that's who got them, okay? But this one time, we got a real ball, real rubber ball. So my cousin, Franny, who was 5 years older, and I took the ball. Well, he took the ball. I followed him. And we went outside and called all our friends together. Now we're going to play soccer out on the road with this real ball. Well, we had the darnest time. The ball wouldn't go where we wanted it to go. We're missing the kicks, and we just couldn't figure it out. So we said, the heck with this. Brought the ball in the house, got out the old rag ball again, and played. Well, a year or 2 later, I'm in the United States. And I was in Pennsylvania, where we lived the first time. And that fall, I'm at school. We go outside for recess, and I see a ball go through the air. It was a football.
First time.
They had sent us a football. We had no idea what a football was. We're trying to play soccer with it. No wonder it was bouncing all over the place.
No wonder.
Missing kick. I couldn't believe it. But that's a kind of culture, kind of culture shocks. Absolutely.
This has been fun in many ways interview. To conclude, and I know we could go on and on, but to conclude. I'm going to I'll ask each of you, and I'll start with Seth. What's your fondest memory, Seth, of growing up in Leominster? Just one quick thing, please.
I think just one of the big things is getting into junior high school and meeting some of the friends that I met there. Of course, we left Lincoln Terrace. You basically almost never left Lincoln Terrace to speak of, if you will. So to broaden yourself and what's happening in there, and other people, the French people, the Irish, whatever, we were able to do that by getting into junior high school. And today's, as I said before, they are such great friends of mine, many of them that are still alive.
Lifelong friends. Yeah. Did you?
Pretty much the same thing. I know we used to have wars, fights between the different neighborhoods. And then one day we realized that there were French and Irish kids in town. And if we got a fight, go fight them. But we ended up all friends, played football together and everything else. And it was a slow transition from being in your own little neighborhood, and all of a sudden you're out there in the world. You know?
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
I would certainly echo those sentiments, but my fondest memories always were of working at Luigi's Market. Just so many life stories that I still tell today, lessons that I learned, the way that I was accepted, almost like a real family member by the Giovanni family, are just treasured memories.
Nice having you.
Nice having you.
It's been a ride.
Well, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Lou, thank you. Seth, thank you. Pell, thank you. I want to thank Kyle Pimerini, Jane Pasco, Jack Selly, Tina Pimerini, Dennis Cormier, all the folks at the LATV studios, and as usual, you, the LATV viewing audience. Thank you very much.